some fractions. For example, let us say we have 1/8, and we want to convert 1/8 to decimal, right? So everything that we have here, we want to convert them to a decimal. So how do we convert 1/8 to decimal? First, we want to actually know what's the divisor and what's the dividend. In this case, the 8 is actually the divisor. So your denominator is always the divisor, and the numerator is the dividend. All the time. So what we're going to do now is to have the 1 being divided by 8. So you could actually see that you're going to get some decimal. You're not going to get that whole number here. You're going to get a decimal. So we're looking at these, converting all these proper fractions to decimals. Now, the first thing that you would say is 8 into the 1. And you realize that you won't be able to do that. So if we say 8 into 1, that's not possible, right? So what we're going to do when that's not possible is that we're going to put a decimal point and then put a 0 at the back. So technically we're going to say 10. It's not really a 10, but we can actually use a fake value of 10 because the decimal point is there. So it's not really a 10, but we could use it like a 10. So again, 8 into the 1, we can't. Then we're going to put a decimal point and then add a 0, and then now look at it like 10. So we'll say 8 into 10, and that's going to be 1 time. I'm going to put the 1 over the 0. And then I say 1 times 8, give me 8. And then we subtract. So the process is the same. We divide, multiply, subtract, drop down. Divide, multiply, subtract, drop down. We're going to do that. So when you subtract, basically you will say 8 from 10, you will get a 2. Now we're going to continue until we get 0 remainder. So if we don't get 0 as a remainder, we will have to continue working. So in this case, we did not get a 0 as a remainder. The remainder was a 2. That means we need to add a 0 at the end here and bring it down. Watch. So we add another 0, we bring it down. There it is. So we call this 20. So now we're going to say 8 into 20. 8 into 20, that's 2 times. And then you multiply 2 times 8, 16. You subtract. Still don't get a 0 because this is a 4. That is still not a 0, and you cannot stop until you get a 0. So we're going to have to add another 0 at the end and bring it down. And when you bring it down, you get 40. Then now we're going to say the 8 into the 40. 8 into 40, 5 times. Here we go. 8 into the 40, 5 times. 5 times 8, 40. And you continue until there's a 0. And when there's a 0, that's when we stop. So if you notice right now, we got a 0. That means we're at the end. Now we want to draw a quick conclusion that, you see, this decimal point that we had here, that decimal point that we have here must be moved up. So it becomes a point here, and then you could put a 0 in front if you want, right? But the bottom line is you have to move up the decimal point. So let's look on the conclusion. 1 over 8 is equal to 0.125 as a decimal at 5 divided by 8. And we want the decimal for that. So everybody, we're going to do 5 divided by 8. Be advised that this number at the bottom is your divisor and the number at the top is your dividend. So I'm just going to write it for now as we stop. So this is our divisor right there. And this is our dividend. All right. So it means then that the divisor goes here and the dividend goes here. And already you're seeing that you're going to end up with a decimal because the dividend is actually smaller than the divisor. Decimal point, then put a 0. And then we're going to refer to this as a 50, right? So it's not really a 50, but we're referring to it as a 50 to guide us through, right? So again, we would have said 5 into 8 into the 5, we can't, and then we put a decimal point, and then we put a 0 around there and refer to it overall as 50. Then now, we're going to say the 8 into the 50. Now you have to know your timetable. 8 sixes is 48, so we're gonna get 6. Mark you, I'm gonna put the 6 over the 0 there. And then the same procedure for long division. We're going to multiply the 6 times the 8. So 6, 8, we're going to get 48. So you're going to subtract. 48 from the 50 is 2. Remember, though, that whenever you're doing this, as long as you're changing your fractions to decimal, you cannot stop unless the remainder is a 0. So that remainder is a 2, then we know that we can't just stop yet, right? So then what we're going to do is to introduce another 0 at the back so that we could take it down. All the time is the same procedure. So now we have 20. So 8 into 20, that's 2 times. 2 times 8, that is 16. We subtract. When we subtract, that's 4. That is still not a 0. This is still not a 0. That means we're still not at the end. So then we're going to have to introduce another 0, and then we're going to bring it down. What do we have here? 40. So the next thing now is to say 8 into 40, that's 5. 5, 8, 40. And when we subtract, then now we realize we get zeros. And when you get zeros, when you're doing this, you know that you're at the end. But you have to be very careful, though, of how you represent your answer. The answer is not 625. Remember that there is a decimal point right here that you're going to have to push up right there. So then remember to put back your decimal point, because there is one. You could put a 0 in front of that. What are we saying here? We are saying here that 5 eighths is the same thing as 0.625 as a decimal.